Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for October 2nd through 8th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 3 shows, I watched 3 movies, and I listened to 2 books. First book I read this week is a horror book called Motherthing. This one is really interesting and it really talks about motherhood in so many various different ways. The essential premise is that our main character and her husband have moved in with his mother because she has needed some help, so they decided to move in with her to do that. She's been in a deep depression and she's kind of had this weird relationship with her son his entire life because of it. And as the book is opening, she has actually attempted self-harm, so they're taking her to the hospital to see if they can get that treated and what the outcome is going to be. Being a horror book, this is going to have a lot of triggers in it. That's just one of them. There are several others, some of them that don't even come into play until very near the end of the book. So as always, I have resources down below for how you can get trigger warnings because I always fear I'm going to miss them. In the midst of trying to love this mother-in-law who doesn't love her in return, she's also trying to consider having a child of their own and what that would mean, and things start changing as the plot goes on as to how her husband is feeling about that situation. We also see flashbacks to her own mother and what she did to her to make her this way. And then our main character also works in a senior center, so she has certain patients that she feels like are basically like her mother. And that is a weird thing to project onto people, which you will see if you read the book. This definitely goes into some dark and twisty places that I did not see coming, so if you're looking for something like that, definitely pick this one up. Later in the week, I forgot that I had already finished this book, and I thought that I wasn't going to get through my nonfiction book I've been working through. So I got a graphic novel from the library on one of the library apps because, as you know, we're traveling. We're currently in Alberta. We just left the Northwest Territories yesterday, and we're making our way back to BC, but we're doing it more slowly this way than when we went up. In any case, I got a graphic novel from one of the library apps, and that's Children of the Woods. This was a self-contained graphic novel. It had all of the chapters in the one graphic novel, which is exactly what I wanted because I didn't want to start yet another series that I will probably not finish anytime soon. When this one starts out, we meet this guy who has been bullied. He kind of has these feelings for this lab partner, and he tries to tell her that in a note, and her alpha, annoying, macho guy boyfriend basically beats him up for it. So he finds this book of magic, and you know that's never a good way to solve your problems, yet teenagers in these books keep doing it. And because of that, there's some unintended consequences. He goes missing. The girl tries to figure out where he went because she's broken up with the boyfriend who has recently been beaten up by something else. And it goes from there. This one had some deeper levels to these different characters that you kind of see in the shadows, and I wish we got to see a little bit more of them because it would make a little bit more sense as to why what's going on is going on. But it could have just been the art style. It also could have been the way that it was narrated because almost every single graphic panel had a narration that was separate but complementary to what was going on in the scene. So it was kind of difficult to keep up with that, but then also keep up with what was going on in the scene, at least for me. On to what I watched this week. I watched the finale of RuPaul's Secret Celebrity Drag Race Season 2, and I was very happy with who won because I've been rooting for this person since the beginning. If you've watched this season, did you enjoy the way it was formatted, kind of like Drag Race meets The Masked Singer? Because I definitely did. Also, what team were you on? Who did you want to win? And were you happy with who won? Let me know down below. I also caught up on the 4th season of RuPaul's Drag Race UK, so I watched episode 2, which was the girl group challenge, and episode 3, which was the bingo challenge. I'm getting to know these queens a little bit more. It's getting harder to want anyone to go home because I'm very much enjoying what they're doing. I kind of felt like the person that went home in the last episode was a little bit picked on, and I don't see why that had to happen, but it's reality TV, obviously. I'm very impressed with the level of things that people are able to create for the second challenge because it was great. The girl group challenge, however, there were a lot of mess-ups. A lot of people couldn't lip sync their own lyrics, which was a problem. And then, yeah, the dancing wasn't the greatest with the exception of like the people that were really good dancers. So that was interesting to watch. I feel like they could have had some more rehearsal time. I also watched the first couple of episodes of a show called Baking Impossible, which takes baking and engineering and creates baconeering. So basically very interesting, intense cakes or whatever desserts, but then you also have an engineering component to it. So in this one, you have one baker and one engineer per team, and then they're given a brief. In the first episode, they had to make a boat that floated at least 20 feet in 45 seconds. and it had to have a cake inside that you would eat at the end. It had to also not capsize, which many of them did, funnily enough. And then in the second episode, they had to make a robot that would carry these desserts through this different obstacle course, and then only if they made it through the obstacle course would they be able to really judge the desserts. They also make desserts in case things are going to capsize or not make it through the obstacle course, so they can still try the dessert even if the robot aspect of it doesn't work out. And then you're scored based on how you did in those two things. Somebody gets to win, somebody gets to go home every week. It's interesting. We got way more into it than we thought we were going to, and I think I'll continue watching it eventually, maybe when we get home, I don't know. As for the movies we watched this week, I finally got around to watching Goodfellas, and yeah, it's a mob movie. I know it's a classic, but I also kind of fell asleep while watching it. And I don't think that was strictly because we'd done a lot of driving that night. I think that might have been part of it, but also it kind of dragged a little bit for me, and it was fine. Like, I'm not saying it was a bad movie, I'm just saying I don't really understand why people are always like, oh my god, Goodfellas, it's so great, because I'm like, it's a movie. We also watched a movie called Final Girls, which has an interesting premise. We have this girl whose mother was an actress, and she was in this movie that was very, very popular, I believe in the 80s. It was a really campy horror movie. She was one of the girls in the movie that got murdered. She wasn't the final girl of that movie. However, our main character is missing her mother after something happens to her, and she is cajoled into going to a screening of the movie on the anniversary of her mother's death. She's there, something breaks out in the theater, she has to try to get away from it, and then she finds herself in the movie with her friends, and they have to figure out how to get out of the movie, which is just a fun premise because she's obviously there and she's like, oh my goodness, this is my mom, but it's not really her mom, it's her mom playing a character, and as far as that person knows, she is that character. She is not a mother to this child, who at that point in her life doesn't even exist yet. I thought it was a fun premise. It was kind of hokey. It's kind of a comedy horror type of situation. It's worth watching. It's not the best thing I've ever seen, but I did enjoy it. We also watched Hello, My Name is Doris, which is a movie I had heard of around the time it came out, but I never got around to watching. This is Sally Field playing a data entry person in this office, and then this younger guy comes to the office and she wants to pursue him. She's also gone through some life changes. She has up until this point been living with her mother, and her mother has recently passed, and she's been the main caretaker for her mother for years. Like, she's always lived in the same house with her mother, and they have a little bit of a hoarding problem. So she's got siblings who want her to get rid of all of her junk so they can sell off the house and split the profits. She wants to pursue this guy. She's got a lot going on. There's a lot of secondhand embarrassment in this one, so if that's not your thing, there is a mild amount of that, so just know that going into it. I also loved how you could tell she read a lot of romance novels, not only because you see that happening, but because you see these romance-like things taking place, and then she basically snaps out of it, and people are like, Doris, are you okay? And she's just standing there, like, imagining the things. And Sally Field did an amazing job at that. Also, it was incredibly random to be watching this and see Anna Akana, who I've followed on YouTube for years. I know she's an actress, but I don't think I've ever stumbled upon a movie that she's been in before, so that was fun for me personally. The first audiobook I listened to this week was The Missing Millionaire. This book is about the disappearance and supposed murder of Ambrose Small, who is a man who owned a lot of theaters in Ontario, and I believe he went missing around December 2nd of 1919. I think that's exactly when he went missing, and to this day people don't know what happened to him. The thing that made this really intriguing is he sold a few of his theater properties, put $1 million in the bank, and then was never heard from again. Now obviously if you're just gonna run off with your mistress or something like that, you're probably gonna take that money with you, but if he ran off with his mistress, it's a different mistress than we already knew that he had, and obviously why wouldn't you take that $1 million with you? There was also a big kerfuffle because his assistant actually absconded with some war bonds and then just like moved jobs, moved to a completely different city, and they eventually tracked him down and he did some jail time for stealing these war bonds. But we don't know if he had anything to do with his boss going missing because he actually had permission to go into his boss's safety deposit box, so it's not like he had to kill his boss to get to these war bonds. There are so many different theories. Apparently this is also a character that shows up in The Skin of a Lion, which I feel like I might have had to read back when I was a teenager. However, if I did read it, I do not remember it because it's been a long time since I've been a teenager. It's been literally half my lifetime ago. So if I did read that one, because it does sound familiar, I don't remember anything, and maybe I should read it again just to see what that author decided happened to Ambrose Small. The other audiobook we listened to yesterday in the car in its entirety. That is South of the Border, West of the Sun. This is a book about a selfish jerk who is a selfish jerk and he knows it, and he makes some decisions to just continue being a bad person because he figures the first time he does a bad thing, he's now a bad person, he should continue to be. And that's pretty much what I got out of it. It starts off with him, he lives in Japan. When he's 12, he has this crush on this girl that just came to his school, but he ends up going to a different middle school than her, they don't see each other, and then he goes on to do other things in life. He gets a girlfriend, and he says he'll wait until she's comfortable with being sexual, and then they do some sexual things, but they don't have sex. And then eventually he meets her cousin and decides he wants to go to Bone Town with her all the time, and they just keep doing it behind this girl's back for a while, and it really breaks her heart. And a really weird thing to me about this book is how he talks about different characters. For example, the first character I mentioned that he was friends with when he was 12 and then eventually reconnects with like 25 years later, we only know her surname. He doesn't even tell us her first name. He does tell us the first name of his first girlfriend. He does not even tell us the name of the cousin he's been banging for a couple of months. And then when he gets a wife, we do know her name, but we don't know his daughter's names. The namings are really weird in this. It's like very dehumanizing, the fact that this character won't just tell us the names of people. And then yeah, I really wanted more out of this where it would be kind of explained at the end as to what happened, because it kind of gets mysterious when he reconnects with this woman from his childhood and then some things happen and then you don't know what kind of happened at the end of that, and it's very open-ended, and I wanted some answers that I did not get. So yeah, read it if you want. It's interesting, but the character is going to piss you off because he's not a good person. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!